in GS paper 1 as well as GS paper 3. The second article, India's winding road to end TB. Now, this topic is specifically focusing on tuberculosis as a challenge. So, in India, tuberculosis is a major problem when it comes to health sector. After COVID-19, we say that TB is a major thing. The third article is related to tea industry. So, India is a good producer of tea as well as India is a good importer of tea. So, we'll understand that over here. The fourth article is related to Election Commission of India, and fifth article is related to Aadhaar card for trees in India. Specifically, we are talking about trees in Jammu and Kashmir. So these are the articles we are going to discuss in detail. Now, before moving ahead, a quick motivation for all of you. The mind is everything what you think you'll become. So it all depends on your mind. If your mindset is positive, if your mindset is optimistic, if you believe, if you have faith in yourself, then anything can be achieved by you. So please have an optimistic mindset while going ahead with this exam preparation. Now, before we move ahead, just a quick review of our products or the admissions are open for Narayana IS courses. 1 year course for prelims cum mains, 2 year course prelims cum mains, and these courses are made in such a fashion that entire syllabus will be covered in detail. We have this strategic micro schedule prepared very specifically to ensure that entire syllabus, all the dimensions will be covered in a good way. Now, moving ahead with our topics of the day. The first topic is related to poverty estimation. Now, as I said, the topic is important for GS1, the topic is important for GS2, the topic is important for GS3. Because poverty as a broad dimension will be anyway useful in writing answers for all three sections. Now, if we look at the previous year question of the year, I guess year is not mentioned, no issues. Despite implementation of various programs for eradication of poverty by the government of India, poverty is still existing. Explain by giving reasons. Now the question is specifically saying that government has brought in so many policies, so many schemes, so many programs, but still we see that poverty exists in India. So what are the core reasons behind it? Obviously, you should have a good idea about the poverty in India. Now, why we are studying about it now? Because recently this report came into picture and this report highlighted the poverty trends in India. That was the reason why we are studying it and why it is being debated right now. Now, for us, it is more important to know what do we mean by poverty. Now, as a term, we all know what do we mean by poverty. But to be very specific, World Bank has given a definition. According to that definition, if any person in India is not able to get this much amount of money, $2.15 per day. Now, if you earn this much amount of money, then you can spend this much amount of money on at least your basic needs. Those basic needs could be your food, clothing, your shelter, whatever it is. At least you can ensure that your basic needs are completed, and for that you need at least $2.15 per day. This much amount is needed. That's why according to World Bank, this is the line, or we call it as poverty line, the global benchmark to know if you are a poor person or not. Now, in simple terms, we say that any person who is not in a position to meet his or her basic needs, that person is a poor person. But there are some types mentioned. Now, when we talk about the types, two terms are very important. One is absolute poverty, another is relative poverty. You see, when I gave you this definition, wherein $2.15 I mentioned as the benchmark. So here I am talking about the absolute poverty. But there is something else which we call in terms of inequality that exists in a particular country or throughout the world. Let's say you look at America. There is one person who is earning, let's say, 1 lakh let's say $1 lakh, and there is another person who is earning hardly $100. Now you see the gap over here. The gap is very big. And here we are talking about inequality. So most of the time, what you will understand from this aspect of relative poverty is that the poverty has to be seen as something in a relative aspect. What is the status of others and what is the status you are having? Then you will feel that even if your country is rich, you are earning decent, you are still a poor person in your country. So, to give you a good example, or to tell it that inequality as an aspect has a key role to play in relative poverty, we are saying that you can be poor, you can be poor on one side because of it is relative poverty, but on the other side, you may seem to be a rich or a middle class person for others. Now, what happens is that if you check the average income in your country, let's say we compare the average income that we have in India and now compare it with USA, that will certainly be different. USA being a high income country, the average income in that country will be very high. So any person who is having income little less than the average income in that country, he will be considered poor in USA. But if you compare his salary or his income with a person in India, you will see that he is earning anyway more than an Indian person. So when we study about the concept of relative poverty, we look at things in terms of the inequality that exists in that particular country. Okay. Then there is third thing called multi-dimensional poverty. Now the concept of poverty has been evolving, and this evolution has brought a new concept wherein we are saying when we are thinking about poverty, it cannot be just about your basic needs, which includes food, shelter, and clothing. Rather, it includes many other dimensions. For example, here you can see these are the dimensions provided by UNDP, wherein they are talking about multi-dimensional poverty index. So UNDP plus this organization called OPHI, they both have worked together to bring in all these dimensions. Now the core dimensions are health, education, and your standard of living. And all these dimensions are further categorized. So you will see that they are talking about nutrition, they are talking about child and adolescent mortality, maternal health. Then in the aspect of education, they are talking about years of schooling, how many years you have gone to the school. Then school attendance. If you look at the standard of living aspect, there they are specifically talking about cooking fuel. Do you have cooking fuel at your home? Sanitation, drinking water, housing, electricity, assets, bank account, all these things are there. Now see, UNDP first provided the list. After that, Niti Aayog got into it and Niti Aayog made some more additions. For example, this maternal health, bank account, these are newly added things to check if the person is poor or not. So now when we look at this concept of multi-dimensional poverty, we don't look at poverty from just one or two dimensions. Rather, so many dimensions are taken into picture, and then we decide whether a person is poor or a middle income person or a rich person. Okay. Now, as far as the estimation angle related to poverty comes into picture, estimating how many poor people are there in our country, what is that poverty line, what can be the poverty line through which we can measure how many people are poor. So that estimation is a technical aspect. Now, if you look at the history, before independence, it was Dadabhai Nauroji who made the first attempt to estimate poverty. So if you know about this book called Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, through this book, he tried to provide some basic estimation of poverty that existed in India. Now, after independence, we had so many committees. For example, we have this Alak Committee of 1979, Lakdawala Committee, Tendulkar Committee, Rangarajan Committee. All these committees were set up so that we can estimate poverty and we can come up with a basic formula through which we can estimate it. Now, if you see Alag committee, Lakdawala committee, more or less they have focused on the calorie intake. So any person in India, whether you are living in rural part of India or urban part of India, what is the calorie intake that you require? This many calories you require so that you can live your life. So basic calorie intake, the focus is on the food aspect, right? But if you see, there is a change of trend from Tendulkar committee of 2009, where we have not focused just on the calorie aspect, but we have thought of consumption basket. And here we are talking about a basket which includes multiple stuffs. Okay. So if you see the Tendulkar committee or even the Rangarajan committee, both have taken broader consumption basket. Now to specifically talk about Tendulkar committee, when they started working on this, they came up with a basket which is common for rural area as well as urban area. So it's not like they made a separate basket for the rural part and separate for urban part. They made the same basket. After that, they came to a conclusion that we will have a poverty line of this kind, wherein if a person is earning rupees 816 per capita per month for rural area. So if a person is earning this much amount in the rural area per month, if he is earning above this, that person is not poor. If he is earning below this, then the person is poor. Similarly, for urban area, that amount was 1000 rupees. Now, when this was published, after that, many people started criticizing this Tendulkar committee and the report. After that, we see in the year 2014, because another committee was set up, Rangarajan committee, that committee came up with its own report. And what they did, they separated this basket altogether. In Tendulkar committee, same basket was used. In case of Rangarajan committee, they have used separate basket for the rural areas, separate basket for the urban areas. But government did not take this report much seriously, and the criticism still continues regarding the poverty estimation. Now, first of all, the core reason behind poverty is very important because it's been around 75 years since independence, and we are still not in a position to say that we have eradicated poverty. So there are some core reasons because of which the poverty is still continuing in India. See, the one reason or the major reason is the historical one, that India was a colony of Britain. And because it was a colony, the colonial exploitation took place. So Britain was growing on, on the major fact that India was deindustrializing. India was becoming poor, and that was the reason why Britain was getting rich. So colonial exploitation was a major historical reason. Now after that, agriculture is very important. In India, agriculture is very important because around 50% of our population is there working in the agriculture sector. But the productivity of agriculture has become relatively low. One of the reasons being the fragmentation of land. Now see, why fragmentation took place? One of the major reasons behind that is the population explosion. Our population is continuously increasing. So earlier, if one person used to hold this much land, now because of population explosion, four people are supposed to take hold of this land. So the land is getting fragmented. So these are the major reasons, the historical and structural reasons behind poverty continuation. The second major reason is the economic inequality that exists in our country. Now, especially after 1990s, when we brought this LPG reforms, after that, we see that our country is growing, our economy is growing quite exponentially. But the growth is somewhat unequal. So we don't say that the growth is happening for everyone. Rather, it is an unequal growth where we see that wealth is getting concentrated in the hands of few. Some people are getting more wealth and others are not getting that. And with this growth, with this unequal growth, we say that poverty is still continuing. So that's the reason Indian economy is growing. We are one of the fastest growing economy. Our GDP is growing, but our poor population is also substantially at a high position. Then there are some geographical challenges. For example, we see many natural disasters. So if you look at the areas like West Bengal, Odisha, multiple times we say that there is some kind of natural disaster coming over there. Or if you look at Bihar, due to flood, many a times we say that such natural disaster has displaced many people from that region. Now, even we can take the example of COVID-19, which was a major disaster for India, wherein we had to go for a lockdown, a major lockdown, health challenges. All this led to poverty for many people. Then there are some social angles, some social inequalities which exist in India in terms of religion, in terms of caste, in terms of gender. That also leads to your exclusion from economic activities. For example, if I take the example of this gender angle, females in India do not completely participate in the economic activities. Why? Because they are expected to remain housewives rather than getting into the economic activities. So most of them do not get into any activity, or after marriage they leave their job. So such things also contribute in poverty. Then there are some implementation issues. So we said that we implemented many policies, many programs to eradicate poverty. But there is hell lot of corruption and leakage that takes place. Because of corruption, the amount of money that you have put in to eradicate poverty, that doesn't reach to the real person. Rather, it gets transferred to some other person in the form of corruption. Many times when the bureaucracy is implementing any policy, the persons who are supposed to be beneficiaries, they are not listed rightly in that particular list. Rather, bogus people are there. So this is called as exclusion errors, which is a major problem we face as part of implementation issue. Then we have urbanization. Now we say urbanization is a good thing. It is a good thing in economic terms. The city is growing, but as far as we see city is growing, we also see the slums are growing. And slums showcase a poverty cycle which exists over there. And those people living in these slums, they do not have any kind of safety net, any kind of social security as far as their health, education is concerned. There's nothing. Even they do not have any kind of insurance, or any kind of support in terms of job security. So this urbanization is also a reason. Then there are some global and environmental challenges. Global could be, for example, if there is any global economic crisis. So if there is a global crisis, certainly if it will affect the people in India. Right now also we are facing many economic hurdles. Even the phenomena of climate change, which is leading to more natural disasters, because of which people will lose their jobs, people will have to displace from one place to another, and they will get into the trap of poverty. Now, as far as poverty estimation is concerned, because that is being discussed many a times, there are some challenges we face in terms of estimating poverty. One of the challenge is related to the data. We don't have the exact data, or many a times we see some variance in the data. So NSSO comes up with the data which is bit different, and national accounts have some different data. So data is one of the problem. Then the challenge is about poverty line. See, we bring the poverty line, then later on some other person will say this is an outdated one. Let's say we are taking even data from census, we'll say we don't have the right census right now. So we have census of 2011. The recent census is yet to take place. So such problems will be there. Then when you're talking about the poverty line specifically, there is one challenge wherein when you talk about the consumption pattern, well, the consumption pattern will not remain same everywhere. For example, if you look at some localities, there the consumption is very costly, and there will be some localities where the cost will be very much less. So you have to take into consideration all these angles rather than bringing one line, one poverty line which is there for rural areas and one specific for the urban areas. There will be some differences. Okay, then we have brought this multi-dimensional poverty index. Well, it's a good one, but the indicators that are there are very much static in nature, and they do not consider income vulnerability. So let's say someone is having a good job right now, but after a few months, let's say due to COVID-19, many people lost their jobs. Many MSMEs could not earn enough amount of money which they were earning earlier. So this income vulnerability is one of the angle, and it is very dynamic. We can't be very sure of it. It is not static that it will remain the same. It depends on many factors. It keeps on changing. So this angle is not mentioned in the multidimensional poverty index. That is why we say even the estimation we are making is not the right estimation. And again, World Bank has brought this $2.15 per day. We can say even this cannot be the right benchmark for all regions, because every region will have different purchasing power and different level of cost of living. Cost of living. So these are the major challenges we say when we are estimating poverty. We are not able to do a good estimation because of these things. Okay. So as part of solution, now there are so many government policies which are already there. So you see any policy, let's say for example you're talking about government initiatives in health sector like Ayushman Bharat Yojana, you say in the education sector or many other programs. All these are the programs which are somehow helping people of India, and that's why they all are dealing with the poverty eradication. But right now what is needed is first of all employment growth. Right now India is growing, but the growth is termed as jobless growth. So people are not getting enough jobs, rather we see rising unemployment in India, but our GDP is growing. So we need, rather than jobless growth, we need job led growth. And for that we have to sustain our economic growth. First of all, our economic growth which is there, it has to be sustained, as well as it has to be made inclusive. It has to be made inclusive. One more thing we need to do is we have to focus more on the sectors which are job intensive. You can specifically focus more on the MSMEs, because MSMEs will be providing more jobs. So employment growth should be our one of the major focus, and this is said specifically by Niti Aayog. Okay, this is the recommendation given by Niti Aayog. Apart from that, wherever we are bringing any program, any scheme that is anti-poverty scheme, we have to ensure that we are making use of technology while implementing anti-poverty programs. Why? Because earlier we said that we bring these programs, but it's of no use. Why? Because there is a lot of corruption, leakage, etc. So that can be curbed using technology. For example, you can make use of Jam Trinity, Chandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity. That's a very good thing. Then you can focus on Amartya Sen's approach. Now, Amartya Sen gave a good idea in the form of capability approach, that you focus on building capability of people. For example, you focus on education and skill. When they become capable, they will anyway come out of poverty. Then we can focus on revisiting our methodologies. The way we are coming up with poverty lines, we can work on it and we can come up with a new methodology. Inclusive policies, which already I have talked about, we need updated data too. So whatever census survey we need to do, we have to do that and come up with the right data, and this is how we can go ahead with eradication of poverty. So this is the comprehensive topic which we have covered right now. Okay, let me check if there is any doubt. So Hima Bindu says, nice explanation, sir. Thank you, Hima Bindu. Okay, so let's move ahead with the next topic. We'll take a 10-second break before that. Okay, so the second topic, that is related to tuberculosis. Now, very important from prelims as well as mains perspective. You can look at such previous year question which asks about any of these diseases like chikungunya, hepatitis B, HIV, AIDS. So such question can be expected for tuberculosis too. Okay, so let's talk about TB. Look at India. When you look at India, we say that the cases of tuberculosis is one of the highest when it comes to India. And in India, we have a target, an ambitious target to end tuberculosis by 2025. See, at the global level, the target is 2030 in the form of our sustainable development goals. But India said we are very ambitious. We'll do that thing before your timeline and we'll eradicate TB from India by 2025. But the 2025 is here and we are still having one of the highest burden of TB in global terms. So not a good news, I would say. Now we should know what is TB, how it comes into picture. First of all, whenever a person gets these kinds of symptoms, then we should check whether the person is having TB or not. The symptoms are cough with sputum and blood. Many times a person while coughing will come up with some blood. There will be chest pain, there will be some weakness, you'll suddenly lose some of your weight, and there will be fever and night sweating. All these are the symptoms. But after diagnosis only, you can come to know whether you have TB or not. Now, when you say TB, the term TB means tuberculosis. And this tuberculosis is caused by a bacteria. Okay, a bacteria, the name of that bacteria is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. If that bacteria infects, gets into your body, infects you, then we say that you have got TB. Now, how will that bacteria come into your body? Well, the route is air. Through air, that bacteria will get inside your body. Now, how serious is this matter? Well, the seriousness you can understand through this data when we are saying it is the 13th leading cause of death globally. So, because of TB, many people are dying. And in case of India specifically, you can say it is second leading infectious killer after COVID-19. Now, this TB can be of different types. One of the TB could be the bacteria came into your body and infected only the lungs of your body, only the lungs part. Such a TB will be called as pulmonary TB. But sometimes this tuberculosis, this particular bacteria, it affects some other organs other than your lungs. In that case, we call it extrapulmonary TB. So it can infect your brain, spine, kidneys, etc. Now, when a person gets such TB, if the person goes to a doctor, the doctor starts treating that person. What happens sometimes, the drugs that are being used by doctor for this patient to treat, those drugs become useless. Why? Because the bacteria start resisting those drugs. The bacteria has changed itself in such a way that the drugs will not be working against this bacteria and the bacteria will not die. So such a phenomena is called as drug resistant TB. That the TB has become drug resistant. So even if you give antibiotics, that will not work. Okay. Now the major part. Can we cure this disease? Do we have something to cure this disease? Yes, the answer is yes. We have medications which are available using the drugs, the injections, all these things. We can cure a person from TB. Second thing, we also have vaccine available. For example, this BCG vaccine, which is available with us, using which we can prevent tuberculosis. Now, the point is this vaccine is having good results for people who are away from equator. So let's say you're living in USA, you're living in Norway, Sweden. In those countries, this BCG vaccine will work really good. But for people who are living near the equator, this vaccine efficacy will be very less. So India being very near to equator, even in India, this vaccine doesn't work really well, we say. And this can be one of the reasons why we say one of the maximum cases are there in India. So globally, we say 26% of the global burden of TB cases lies in India, and you can see the number of people dying because of TB. 4,80,000 people are dying in India because of TB, and this is an official data. So it's somewhere around 1,400 people per day. And you can see the numbers, estimated TB cases. Now these are estimated cases. So even if these are the official numbers, we say that there are many cases wherein the cases are not really registered. We don't have the real data. And that's why the estimation goes on to numbers somewhere around 27 lakh in a particular year. So you can understand that the situation is very much serious. And that's why government is also focusing on eradicating it. At the global level, we have many initiatives. For example, we have a global fund, we have Stop TB Partnership hosted by United Nations. Then we have this global plan of eradicating TB from the entire world. So, investment of $250 billion, treating 50 million people. This is the goal of this particular plan. And we have SDG goal by 2030 end it. This is at the global stage. And in India, if you see, there are so many programs by government too. For example, Pradhan Mantri TB Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, Nikshay Poshak Yojana. Now, this is very interesting. A person who is being treated for TB, that person will be provided with rupees 500 per month, so that additional nutritional support can be provided to that person under our National Health Mission. Then we have this National TB Elimination Program, very important. Now, under this program, we said that we have to eradicate this TB by 2025, 5 years prior to the SDG goal. And for that, we brought this national strategic plan to implement. But although we say we have not been very much successful in doing this thing. Then government brought this campaign, TB Harega, Desh Jeetega campaign. All these initiatives are brought by Government of India. Okay, so this was all about the tuberculosis. Now let me check if there are any other comments or any other doubts. No doubts. Okay, we'll move ahead. The next article is related to tea industry. Okay, now it's incorrectly mentioned over here. Tea industry can be important for your economy as well as environment part. Now look at this previous year question. Coffee and tea both are cultivated on hill slopes. Now this question is specifically talking about the cultivation of coffee and cultivation of tea, and some kind of comparative statements are given. To answer such question, you should have clear-cut idea about coffee as well as tea. What kind of climate is required? What are the requirements for its propagation and all? So right now, because the article is focused on tea, we'll be focusing on the tea aspect. Now, why is it in news? Recently, we got a news that in India, this tea is getting imported from Kenya, and this import number has increased very rapidly. Right now, the number is 288% more than what we used to import. So suddenly we are saying, suddenly we started importing more from Kenya. And this is threatening the tea producers that are there in India. Now, those who do not know, India is a very large producer of tea as well as very large importer of tea. We'll understand that. Right now, what are the reasons behind this increased imports from Kenya? First thing is, if you bring any tea from Africa, let's say the eastern part of Africa, Kenya being one of them, now the tea from Kenya is first of all very cheap. It's not that costly. If you look at Indian tea, it is relatively having high cost because it is a premium product. The quality of Indian tea is of a very high quality, whereas the Kenyan tea is having a very degraded quality. So many people, what they are doing, they are importing tea from Kenya, which is cheap also. They are blending or mixing it with some of the Indian tea, and then they are calling it or putting a tag of being Indian product and selling it into the market, or they are even exporting it. That's the reason we are observing that suddenly Kenyan tea imports have increased. Now there is one role of this Mombasa tea auction. So in Kenya, you see that there is a platform through which it is very easy to sell tea. So this is called as Mombasa auction. Now specifically this platform is for East African nations, and all these will be sending their products over there. So that's the reason. Overall we say all these are the reasons behind sudden increase. Now, is it a concerning thing for Indian tea industry? Certainly yes. First of all, these cheap imports which are coming from Kenya to India, it will lead to more supply of tea in the Indian market, because of which the price of tea products will be reduced. That is not good. Second, Indians sell tea in the foreign markets, and we say that we have a quality product, a premium product. But when many people are mixing up Kenyan tea with the Indian tea, and this blended product is being sold to any European or an American, you see that this quality is diluted, because of which our reputation will be at stake. And third thing, when the price of tea will be down in our domestic market, what will happen? Because of this, the competition will increase, because of which the overall sector might face a short recession, or a segment we call it as reduction in their supply, because demand is less, they'll be supplying less, they'll be producing less, and for that they'll have to remove some people from their job. So it will have impact on the employment. So this is concerning for India. Now we have this rank of being second largest producer in the entire world when it comes to tea. Number one is China, number two is India. But interestingly, whatever we are producing, we are consuming most of it. So India, whatever India produces, we are talking about tea only, 80% of that tea is consumed by Indians only. So only 20% is something we are actually exporting. Now, if you talk about specific areas in India, well, Assam is at the top when it comes to tea production. So more than 50%, half of the production of tea is taking place only from Assam. After Assam, we say West Bengal is doing good, Tamil Nadu is doing good, Kerala is doing good. Okay. And when we are saying only 20% we are exporting, that 20% is going into the markets of UK, Iran, Russia, and many other parts of the world. But these are the places where we export more: UK, Russia, and Iran. Now, we should know about the needs or requirements that are there for the production of tea. What all is required? Well, first thing is the specific temperature that is required. For example, the temperature range should be 16 degree to 32 degree. So if you're producing tea, if you're cultivating it, you cannot have very extreme temperatures. So this temperature range is very important. Second, you need to have a really good rainfall, which is somewhere in the range of 150 to 300 centimeters annually. This is also very important. Then you need to have humidity which is on a higher end. So ideally we expect that at least 80% humidity should be there every time, and it should not go below 40% at any point of time. Okay. Then we also need sunlight. So at least 5 hours a day there should be sunlight, because sunlight is very important for this tea cultivation. Then there is specific requirement in terms of soil also. The soil should be very much acidic. Now to have acidic soil, we say that its pH should be less than 7. But in case of tea, we are saying it should be somewhere around 5. And the soil should be well drained, deep and fertile loamy soil. So this is the preference we give. Then there is some geographical preference. First of all, you should be very near to the equators, wherein we say tropical or subtropical climate is required. And there also, if it is a hilly area, then it would be much better. Okay. So because of these reasons, we say that Asia, Africa, South America, these are the regions where we see that there are most of the producers of tea existing. And the propagation of this tea plant, this happens through its seeds as well as its roots. So this root cutting can be used to plant tea. Now, when you understand all these requirements, then you will understand why India is a major producer, because we can ensure that all these requirements are met. Okay. Now, from the bureaucratic aspect or administrative aspect, we have Tea Board of India. It was established under Tea Act 1953 and it works under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. If you look at this board, there will be total 31 members, which will include producers, brokers, traders, and even member of parliaments. And this body is not a permanent body. It is reconstituted every 3 years. So after 3 years, it will not exist. Again, government will make a new body. So this will happen. If you look at its headquarter, it is there in Kolkata, West Bengal, and there are many offices of Tea Board of India located throughout India. There are total 23 offices. And if you look at its functioning, what exactly this board is doing? First of all, if you want to do research and development with respect to the tea plantation and all, this tea board will help you. If you want some financial help, they will help you. If you need any technical support, they'll help you. And if you want to do the branding of your product, if you want to promote your product, there also tea board is going to help you. So all these are its functions. Clear? So we're done with tea board. 3 articles are done. Now, fourth article, which is related to Election Commission of India. Now, Election Commission as a constitutional body, very important. You can see previous year question asked on Election Commission. Even in mains, you will find questions related to Election Commission. Why we are talking about it? Because Election Commission is going to celebrate or is celebrating its 75th anniversary. But on this 75th anniversary, we are saying that there are some discrepancies because of which we are putting allegations on this body, especially with respect to this Maharashtra elections. So Maharashtra State Assembly elections, related to that, we are saying that the electoral roll which was made, there are some discrepancies in it. Because of which on the 75th anniversary, many people are even criticizing Election Commission of India. So we'll understand the basics first. Election Commission of India. It was built, it was established on 25th January 1950. So we are completing 75 years. And this day is celebrated as National Voters Day in India. Now, Election Commission of India, it's a constitutional body. And the main role of this body is to conduct free and fair elections in India. And which elections, to be very specific? Well, Lok Sabha elections, Rajya Sabha elections, state assembly elections, president elections, and vice president elections. These are the 5 things they are supposed to do. Now you may say, what about panchayat elections? What about the urban local body elections? Well, that doesn't come under the Election Commission's work. Rather, for that we have State Election Commission, a separate state election commission which takes place, which ensures elections of panchayat and municipal bodies is taken up. Now, specifically, if we talk about Election Commission of India, its headquarters is located in New Delhi. Now, these are the constitutional provisions related to election and election commission. For example, 324. This is for the power of election commission and responsibility. So, superintendence, direction and control of elections. 325, it's about no discrimination in electoral rolls based on religion, race, caste or sex. 326 says that if you're 18 plus, you will be voting in the election. So, adult suffrage. Article 327, Parliament can legislate on elections. So, any law which is needed to be made related to elections, that can be done by Parliament. And state legislatures can legislate on state elections as per Article 328. Then Article 329, this clearly says that whatever election commission is doing, whatever is this electoral matter, their judiciary cannot interfere. So these are important articles, I would say, and you all should know about these articles. Now, how does Election Commission of India look? Well, initially it was a one-member body. So, Election Commission of India means there will be only one person. This was the earlier thing. But after 1989, things changed. So, it was made a multi-member body. So, multi means it could be more than one but how much, not sure about it. Now the president will decide how many people will be part of election commission. If I talk about the current status, right now we have total 3 members part of election commission of India. One will be chief election commissioner and two will be election commissioners. Okay. Now, as far as the appointment part is concerned, well, president is the one who is going to appoint this chief election commissioner as well as election commissioners, and this will be done under this act, CEC and other ECs Act 2023. Once you are appointed, then your tenure will be either for 6 years or till the time you complete 65 of age. Then what about your salary? Your salary will be exactly similar to what the salary of Supreme Court judges is. So you can understand the status as being similar to Supreme Court judges. Now, when it comes to removing chief election commissioner and election commissioner, well, if you want to remove the chief election commissioner, it is clearly mentioned that removal can take place just as in the form of Supreme Court judge removal. So just the way Supreme Court judge is removed. How Supreme Court judge is removed? Well, there is a key role of Parliament. In Parliament, you have to put a motion, you have to pass it with a special majority. So you need the majority of your total membership and two-thirds of people present and voting. With this special majority, if you pass it in the parliament, then a judge of Supreme Court can be removed. So similarly, CEC can be removed in the same manner. But when we talk about election commissioners, you don't need the parliamentary voting. Rather, only this CEC will make a recommendation to the president to remove this particular election commissioner, and president can take a call directly. Okay. Now there are few limitations with respect to Election Commission of India. First thing is their appointment is made without any specific qualification. So there is no qualification mentioned that this person should have this much thing. There is no specific criteria mentioned. Second, after completing their tenure as election commissioners, there is no restriction on them to become part of government or get any position in the government. So they can be made anything after some time by the government. So these are some of the limitations. And the recent thing, especially the issues in electoral rolls, which we are specifically discussing. Why? Because the allegations are being made. So recently when Maharashtra state elections was being carried out, and there specifically we saw the electoral roll was being prepared. Now, in that electoral roll, suddenly we saw some new additions, inclusions of voters, and the number is somewhere around 48 lakh. So, this sudden increase, mass voter inclusion, for this, people are saying that this is done so that a particular political party or a particular alliance can get some benefit out of it. So they are saying that there was some interference from the executive side on the Election Commission of India. And when this allegation was made, Election Commission of India did nothing as such to make its all mechanisms so transparent that people start trusting this organization or institution. They have not made any specific action in this aspect. This is what is being discussed or being alleged with respect to Election Commission of India. Okay. Now, the last article of the day, rather it's a snippet, not a detailed article as such. It is related to Digital Tree Aadhaar initiative. So you see, if you go to Kashmir, there are some trees which we call as chinar trees. So a new initiative is being launched wherein these chinar trees are being given a specific ID, just like our Aadhaar card, which is very unique for every person in India. Similarly, we are giving a unique ID to the chinar trees. Why? We want to preserve these trees. We want to preserve the cultural heritage we are having. For that, we are making use of technology. So we'll be using separate QR codes. We'll be making use of the GIS tagging. So using GIS technology, you can mark exactly where this particular tree is located. So all this is being done. The plan is to build an atlas, a Chinar atlas. So Throughout India, especially Kashmir region, we'll find out how many such chinar trees are present. And this is being done by Jammu and Kashmir Forest Research Institute, which is part of the Jammu and Kashmir government. So if we talk about chinar tree specifically, it is having a cultural importance since last 2000 years in Kashmir, and they are very strong. See, their height is somewhere around 30 meters, and they take total 150 years to get matured. So you can understand what kind of tree is this. In recent times, we have observed some decline in the number of chinar trees. So this decline you can see with these numbers, and the reason could be climate change, reason could be your urbanization, because of which trees are being cut. So right now these initiatives are just to ensure that we preserve these trees. And especially if I talk about the trees that are there in Kashmir, there are 11 chinar trees which are part of the top 20 monumental trees in the world. So it is very interesting, we can say. Okay, so this is all about all the 5 articles that we were supposed to discuss. Okay, now we have some practice questions. One mains practice question related to poverty. Poverty is a multi-dimensional phenomena that requires a holistic approach for effective eradication. Analyze this statement in the context of India's poverty challenges and measures, and this has been asked for mains, 10 marks. So first of all, simply what we will try to do is to define poverty. You can make use of this definition given by World Bank, or you can write your own definition too. Okay, then we will mention the dimensions of poverty, for example, absolute, relative, multidimensional, the historical context and how this concept is evolving. And because if you see, the question is very broad, so here we can simply put all the factors why this poverty is coming into picture, why it is persisting, all these factors can be mentioned, then what kind of challenges we have, and how we can make use of different measures. So here I have put a lot of content, but the major point they expected was the challenges part, the measures part that we can take. Okay, so that should be part of your answer. Okay, and you can conclude with a positive note so that we can eradicate it. Now the next question, now these are the prelims practice questions from yesterday's article, so I'll be giving the answer for this. With reference to critical minerals, consider the following statements. Critical minerals are essential for economic development and national security. Yes, so this point is right. Concentration of extraction or processing of critical minerals in a few geographical locations can lead to supply chain vulnerabilities. Yes, this is right. This is why we are very much concerned about these minerals. All countries have the same list of critical minerals based on global consensus. Absolutely wrong. Every country will come up with its own list. So this is wrong. So answer is A, 1 and 2. Very easy question. Then next question is related to Hong Kong Convention. The convention applies to ships above 500 gross tonnage engaged in international trade and includes warships and naval auxiliary vessels. First statement itself is wrong. It doesn't include these warships and naval auxiliary vessels. So if we take it as wrong, you will see that you can directly reach out to the answer B. Why? Because there is only one option which does not include first statement. So this is like we can eliminate. Then third, National Health Mission. This was launched in the year 2013 by merging the National Rural Health Mission and National Urban Health Mission. The primary objective is to achieve universal health coverage by addressing communicable, non-communicable disease. And these HWCs introduced under NHM aim to provide comprehensive primary healthcare services. All these statements are absolutely correct. So the answer will be D, 1, 2, 3. Now this is your homework. The first question related to tuberculosis. It's a very easy question. It's caused by protozoa. It can spread through air from person to person, and currently there is no vaccine available. If you have watched this lecture, you can easily answer this. Then see, these are questions for you to practice. The answers will be provided on the next day. But for today, I expect all of you to click on the link given in the comment box and reach out to our website where you can directly attempt these questions. Okay. Then question on Election Commission. Election Commission of India is a constitutional body established on 25th Jan 1950. It's responsible for conducting elections to Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, State Legislative Assembly, local bodies like Panchayat and municipalities. Then CEC and EC have a fixed tenure of 6 years or until the age of 65, whichever is earlier. And CEC can be removed from office only through a process similar to the removal of Supreme Court judge. Again, a very easy question, although factual, but a very easy question. And last, India is the second largest tea producer globally after China, and India consumes about 80% of the total tea production. Again, a very easy question, you can make it. So these are the questions you can attempt, and we'll meet in the next session. Thank you for joining.